The town of Greyhaven looked ordinary on the surface. A dusty junction, food stalls, motorbikes, shouting traders, and tired people rushing home before dark. Nothing about it felt special. But every town has a secret, and Greyhaven's secret sat quietly under the old streetlight near the bus stop. His name was Elias Crow. People called him that broken man. By day, Elias looked harmless. His clothes were torn, his shoes mismatched. He sat on the same wooden crate every morning, holding a rusted tin cup and staring at the ground like life had already defeated him. Some days he muttered to himself. Other days he just smiled at nothing. Poor soul, people said. Mothers dropped coins in his cup, drivers ignored him, teenagers laughed behind his back. No one feared him, no one watched him, and that was the problem. Because when the sun went down, Elias didn't go home. He woke up. The first child vanished on a Thursday. Her name was Mira, 9 years old, sent by her mother to buy bread from the corner shop. She never came back. They searched the streets. They checked the bushes. They called her name until their throats hurt. Nothing. The police wrote it down and moved on. She probably wandered off, they said. But the town felt different after that. Quieter, heavier. 3 weeks later, another child disappeared. Then another. Always near the junction, always after sunset, and always without a trace. People started whispering, "Something is wrong here. This isn't coincidence." But no one looked at Elias, because Elias was still there every morning, still poor, still broken, still harmless. One night, a woman named Mrs. Holloway closed her shop late. She was tired and angry at herself for staying past dark. As she locked her door, she saw movement near the streetlight. It was Elias, but he wasn't sitting. He was standing, and he wasn't alone. A small figure stood in front of him, a child. Mrs. Holloway froze. She couldn't hear what Elias said, but she saw him kneel, smile, and hold out something shiny in his hand. The child stepped closer, then both of them disappeared into the darkness behind the buildings. Mrs. Holloway stood there shaking, her heart beating like a drum in her chest. She told herself, "Maybe I imagined it." But deep down, she knew she hadn't. The next morning, another mother was screaming in the streets. Her son was gone, and Elias Crow sat under the streetlight, humming softly, like he always did. Greyhaven stopped feeling safe after that third disappearance. Mothers no longer sent their children out alone. Shops began closing early. And every evening, as the sky turned orange and the shadows stretched across the road, people glanced toward the old streetlight at the junction. Because Elias Crow was always there. Still sitting, still quiet, still invisible. But now, people were starting to notice him. Mrs. Holloway couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the child stepping toward Elias. The smile. The slow, calm movement into the dark. She tried to tell herself it was just stress, fear playing tricks on her mind. But fear doesn't leave bruises on the heart. 2 days later, she finally spoke. She leaned across her vegetable stall and whispered to another woman, "I saw him with a child that night." The woman froze. "Who?" "Elias." Her face drained of color. "You're not the first person to say that," she murmured. By the end of the week, the whispers had spread like smoke. People didn't say it loudly, they didn't say it openly, but they said it. "That man is not what he seems. He's always there when someone disappears. Why does he never leave town?" Someone even claimed they saw Elias carrying a heavy sack late at night. Another said they heard crying near the abandoned warehouse behind the junction. But when the police were told, they shrugged. He's a beggar, not a criminal. And Greyhaven learned the hardest lesson of all.
Evil survives best when authority looks away. One evening, a delivery driver named Marcus Reed broke down near the junction. His van sputtered and died under the streetlight. Frustrated, he stepped out to check the engine. That's when he noticed Elias wasn't sitting. He was standing, watching. Elias took one slow step forward. "Car trouble?" he asked softly. Marcus nodded, uneasy. "Yeah, I think the battery's dead." Elias smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, just empty. "I can help," he said. Something in his voice made Marcus's skin crawl. He shook his head. "No, I'm good." Elias stared at him for a long second, then slowly sat back down. Marcus fixed the issue and drove away fast. But in his mirror, he swore he saw Elias smiling at him, like a man who had just missed a meal. That same night, a teenage boy named Leo vanished. Last seen near the junction. Last seen under the streetlight. The town was no longer whispering. Now they were afraid. A small group of men gathered at the back of a closed bar. They didn't bring drinks. They brought flashlights, sticks, old hunting knives. "We can't wait for the police," one of them said. "They're not listening," another replied. "And that man is still sitting there like nothing is wrong." They all knew who he meant. Elias Crow, the broken man, the quiet one, the invisible one. But what none of them knew was that Elias had already noticed them too. And that night, he was ready. They started watching Elias Crow 3 nights later. Not openly, not boldly, they hid. 5 men, different ages, different fears, but one shared purpose: to see what the broken man did when the town slept. They took positions around the junction as the shops closed and the streets emptied. One behind the phone booth, one near the drainage, 2 behind the abandoned billboard, and one on the rooftop of a closed cafe. Elias sat under the streetlight like always, tin cup by his feet, head tilted slightly, eyes half closed, waiting. At 9:17 p.m., the first strange thing happened. Elias stood up, not suddenly, not nervously, calmly. He looked around the empty road, then slowly picked up his tin cup and placed it inside a torn black backpack that none of them had ever seen before. He was preparing. At 10:02 p.m., a child appeared, a boy, maybe 11, walking fast, alone. The men stiffened. The boy slowed when he saw Elias, hesitated, took a step back. Elias raised his hand. "Don't be afraid," he said gently. His voice carried in the quiet street like smoke. "I just want to help you." The boy stopped. One of the men behind the billboard whispered, "Move, now." But no one moved. They watched, frozen. Elias reached into his bag and pulled out a small silver object. It looked like a whistle. He blew it once. No sound came out, but the boy's eyes glazed over. Just for a second. Then he stepped forward, like he had been pulled by invisible strings. The men's hearts slammed against their ribs. "This is wrong," someone muttered. Elias took the boy's hand and led him toward the dark alley behind the old warehouse. Slowly, quietly, deliberately. One of the watchers, Caleb, broke. He ran. "Hey!" he shouted. Elias stopped. The boy stopped. Everything stopped. Elias turned his head. His face was calm, but his eyes were not. They were furious. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. Caleb raised his flashlight and charged. Elias shoved the boy backward into the shadows. Then he moved. Too fast. He swung something metal from his sleeve. Caleb screamed. The light dropped. Blood hit the pavement. The other men rushed forward, but Elias was already gone. So was the boy. Only Caleb remained, shaking, bleeding, and alive. Barely. At the hospital, Caleb whispered what he saw. He had something in his hand, like a charm. He used it on the boy. The doctor stared at him slowly. Are you saying he hypnotized him? Caleb shook his head slowly. No, he controlled him. The town finally believed, not because of rumors, not because of fear, but because blood doesn't lie. And somewhere in the darkness behind Greyhaven, Elias smiled, because the hunt had truly begun. Greyhaven was no longer in denial. Caleb's blood had changed everything. The police were forced to listen now, and for the first time in weeks, Elias did not return to his spot under the streetlight. That alone terrified everyone, because when a hunter disappears, it means he's changing his strategy. At 11:12 p.m., a call came in, a woman's voice, shaking. There's a man outside my house. He's just standing there. He's not moving. He's looking at my son's window. The address was 3 blocks from the junction. Frost grabbed his jacket. That's him. They arrived fast. Too fast. The street was empty, but the boy's bedroom window was open. The curtains were moving, and inside the room, the child was gone. Frost slammed his fist against the wall. He's not running. He's challenging us. That's when the town made its own decision. The men who had once whispered in fear now picked up flashlights, bats, pipes, and hunting rifles. Shop owners, drivers, fathers, brothers. They didn't wait for orders. They went looking. Near the railway depot, someone screamed. A real scream. Not fear, pain. They ran toward it and found Elias, standing in the middle of the open yard, holding a struggling teenage girl by the arm. She was alive, crying, fighting. "Let her go!" someone shouted. Elias smiled, a real smile this time. "You should have stayed asleep." He raised a charm. The girl went limp, her eyes went empty, and she stopped fighting. That's when Frost fired. The bullet hit Elias in the leg. He fell, hard. The charm slipped from his fingers. The girl collapsed to the ground, unconscious but breathing. The crowd rushed forward. They surrounded him, flashlights in his face, weapons raised, hands shaking. Frost stepped in front. "It ends now, Elias." Elias laughed, even bleeding, even trapped. "You think I'm alone?" he whispered. "You think I started this?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a phone. One tap, and in the distance, an engine started. Headlights appeared at the far end of the yard. A black van. No plates, no markings, moving slowly, silently. Frost felt the air change. "Everyone get back," he shouted. Too late. The van doors slid open, and something inside it moved. Elias looked up at Frost, eyes glowing with belief, not fear. "They're coming," he said softly, "and you've already lost."
The black van rolled closer. Its headlights didn't flicker. Its engine didn't roar. It just glided, like it had no weight. The crowd stepped back instinctively. Even the bravest men felt it, that pressure in the chest, that sense that something was very, very wrong. The van doors slid open slowly. Inside stood 3 figures, all dressed in dark coats, all wearing gloves, all completely calm. Elias struggled to his feet, limping toward them. "You're late," he said. One of the figures tilted his head. "You were careless." Frost raised his gun. "Step away from the vehicle. Now." None of them listened. The tallest figure stepped forward and looked straight at Frost. "We are not here for you," he said. "We're here for what belongs to us." He nodded toward Elias. Frost tightened his grip. "Not anymore." The figure smiled, a thin, humorless smile. "You don't understand," he said. "You caught one fisherman, not the ocean." Suddenly, the air went cold. Not normal cold, deep cold, the kind that makes your bones ache. Elias raised his head and whispered something, a phrase in a language none of them recognized.
The wind changed direction. The lanterns flickered. The lights on the police cars went out, one by one. Darkness swallowed the yard. People screamed. Someone fired a shot. It hit nothing. In the dark, shapes moved. Fast. Silent. A man dropped. Then another. Not dead, but frozen. Staring. Unable to move. Frost fought through the panic and ran toward the girl. He grabbed her and dragged her behind a stack of crates. He could hear Elias laughing somewhere in the dark, enjoying it. Then, just suddenly, the lights came back on. The van was gone. The figures were gone. Elias was gone. But the ground was not empty. 3 men lay frozen, eyes wide, breathing, alive, but broken. One of them whispered over and over, "They touched my thoughts." The girl stirred. Frost held her. "You're safe," he said, even though he wasn't sure it was true anymore. By morning, Greyhaven was shaken to its core. This wasn't just one killer. This was a network, organized, hidden, powerful. And Elias Crow was just the bait. Inspector Frost didn't go home. He couldn't. Sleep felt like surrender now. The men who had been frozen were taken to the hospital. Doctors ran tests but couldn't explain what had happened. No drugs, no trauma, just something missing. "They're awake," a nurse whispered, "but they're not here." Frost returned to the railway depot, to Elias's trophies, to the photographs, to the notebook. He stared at the words again. "They walk into the dark willingly." What did that mean? He flipped deeper into the notebook, past the names, past the dates, to the last pages. There was a map, not of Greyhaven, but beneath it, underground tunnels, old service routes, storm drains, forgotten passages. Frost felt the weight of it. Elias wasn't just taking people, he was moving them below the city. With a small team he trusted, Frost went down. They lifted a rusted manhole cover behind the depot. The smell hit first. Damp, rot, metal. They descended. The tunnels stretched farther than expected, wider, reinforced, not abandoned, used. They followed the markings from the notebook, symbols scratched into the walls, the same shapes as on the charms. Then they found it, a chamber, hidden, deep. Inside were cages, not empty, men, women, children, alive, weak, silent. Their eyes followed Frost with no hope left in them. One girl whispered, "He makes us forget." They freed as many as they could, but before they could leave, they heard footsteps. From the dark, slow, controlled, not running, approaching. Elias's voice echoed, "You should not be here." He stepped into the light, not wounded, not limping, perfectly fine. Behind him, the 3 figures from the van appeared again. Frost raised his gun. "You're finished." Elias tilted his head. "No," he said calmly, "you just early." He snapped his fingers, and the tunnel doors slammed shut behind them. The tunnel doors slammed shut with a sound like thunder, steel against steel, final. Frost felt the air tighten around them. His team raised their weapons, backs pressed together, eyes searching the darkness. The captives behind them rattled as the captives whimpered. Elias stepped forward, not rushed, not afraid. "Every city has a shadow," he said softly. Greyhaven just pretended it didn't. One of the dark-coated figures lifted a hand. The lights in the chamber dimmed. Not off, just weaker, sickly. Elias smiled. "You see, we're not taking people, we're collecting them." "For what?"
Frost demanded. For what all hunters collect, control. Frost fired. The bullet hit one of the figures in the shoulder. He stumbled, but didn't fall, didn't even cry out. Instead, he looked annoyed. The second figure raised something metallic. Frost felt the pressure in his skull again, thoughts blurring, memories slipping. He forced himself to think of his daughter's laugh, her crooked smile, her stubborn eyes. The pressure broke. He charged. The chamber exploded into chaos, gunshots, shouting, metal clanging. One of Frost's men smashed a lantern against the wall. Fire leapt up, light flooding the space. The captives screamed. Elias backed toward the altar at the center of the chamber, his calm finally cracking. "You don't understand what you're breaking," he shouted. "This system has fed cities for decades." Frost grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the stone. Not anymore. One of the figures rushed Frost from behind. A shot rang out. The figure dropped. Not dead, but done. The third one ran, toward the tunnel. Frost let him go, because Elias was the key. They dragged Elias into the light, real light this time, outside the tunnel, outside the lies. The captives were carried out one by one, alive, shaking, but free. By sunrise, Greyhaven saw the truth. Police vans, ambulances, rescued victims, and Elias Crow, no longer broken, no longer invisible, on his knees in chains. In court, he finally spoke. "We didn't start this," he said. "We only perfected it." But perfection couldn't save him. Elias Crow was sentenced to life without parole. The network collapsed. The tunnels were sealed. The charms destroyed. The city exhaled for the first time in months. Weeks later, a new streetlight was installed at the junction. Brighter, higher, stronger. Under it, a small plaque was placed. It read, "Darkness only wins when we refuse to look." If this story kept you watching till the end, hit like and subscribe for more dark truths from the shadows. More stories are coming, and next time, the danger will be even closer. Stay safe, stay curious, and never ignore the quiet ones.